Hello, everyone, and welcome to my episode 2 review of Marvel's What If animated series on Disney Plus. Almost sound like I'm doing an official promo or something. Hope everyone's doing well today. Speaking of doing well today, as soon as the StreamYard chat catches up to reality, thank you, tall person. Happy Helium Discovery Day. Well, thank goodness for that, because otherwise we would not have comical voices we could make for ourselves breathing in the gas. Thank you, tall person. Something I don't think I mentioned in my previous review of episode 1, and something that occurred to me as I was watching today's episode. The benefit of this series over every other Marvel series to this point is that it is an anthology series, and each episode has the potential of being written by a different person. Unlike Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, Loki, we don't have one person or a couple of people's combined perspectives on every story. And as a result of that, each episode has the promise of actually being good. And such was the case, in my opinion, of episode 2, as compared to episode 1, which was essentially just a retelling of the entire Captain America movie, except it was Peggy Carter holding the shield. Episode 2 actually does what most What If comic book issues did. There was a sense of familiarity, but the story, the tone, the events are all entirely different, which was great. I know, I'm surprised too. I was going into this going like, oh boy, this is going to be something. It's going to be another message. But no, nope. There's only one sort of narrative flaw overall with it. I'll get to that momentarily, but the benefits of this episode were that it stuck to the kind of bombastic humor and sort of comical nature and tone of the original Guardians of the Galaxy movie. It had that sort of James Gunn feel to it. But let me get into it. So we start off the episode, as is familiar, on Morag, the planet that had the power gem. At least I think it was the power gem, wasn't it? Yeah, the purple one. And a familiar figure-ish walking towards the fort to grab the prize. But this time he's encountered by what's this guy's name? Kofo or something. But this time, this guy's a fanboy. He's not there to kill Star-Lord necessarily. He's not there because he doesn't know who Star-Lord is. He knows exactly who Star-Lord is because this Star-Lord is a completely different character. We find out very quickly that he's actually a hero. He's effectively the Robin Hood of the galaxy. Not some outlaw, not some thief, not some con artist. He is a good guy, an understood and recognized good guy. And so there's this kind of goofy scene where, as in contrast with the original movie, our enforcer here actually shows respect to this guy and is hesitant to want to fight him, but he's working for his boss, Ronan, and so he has to fight him. And there's, again, it's kind of funny. It's kind of entertaining as they fight, and T'Challa wins, and the guy wants to join his crew. He's like, oh man, I wish I could work for you, but I work for this other guy. And so they fight. T'Challa doesn't kill him, but he defeats him. And then he, as he's unconscious from the fight, he has a smile on his face. I got beaten by Star-Lord. And so as he's leaving, T'Challa's like, I mean, I've hired worse. And so he takes this guy with him to go back to their ship. They're confronted by another raft of soldiers from Ronan the Destroyer. And Yondu saves him from the soldiers. And yeah, we find out that, T'Challa has completely changed the Ravagers as an organization, quote unquote. They're still called the Ravagers, but now they're more like Robin Hood and his band of merry men instead of like just pirates and criminals. So this what if changed everything before we even arrive at the start of the story, because that one change altered the course of history. alter the course of other people's lives, like a what if episode in comic books should, instead of just replaying the same events with really no variation. Heaven forfend. Anyway, so they get into a ship, and then we flash back to how did this all start? And this is the only narrative point that I have a problem with. In this version of reality, young T'Challa is out sort of running around. We have a scene with his father where he finds out the importance of, Wakanda and everything. And then T'Challa goes out and he's running around at night, sort of playing like a kid, except he throws his spear and it goes through the cloaking device that protects Wakanda from the outside world from seeing it. And he goes outside the boundary just for a second, Prince of Wakanda with no supervision. Okay. And then the Ravagers show up and they kidnap him. And their explanation for this is because Wakanda had readings of crazy energy stuff and the guys saw this little kid out there, they assumed that was who they were looking for. Because it wasn't Yondu who was in charge of kidnapping this kid. It was his henchmen. These two guys. So Yondu gave the job of snatching the kid to these two guys, even though they had an image of what Peter Quill was supposed to look like. And instead of immediately taking this kid back and getting Peter Quill, because that's who they were hired to go get, they just decide to keep this kid. And T'Challa is completely fine with abandoning his homeworld and his family and his kingdom for these strangers. This is the only part of the show that made me go, no, this doesn't make any sense. But I mean, as far as like diamonds in the rough, that was my only major complaint, I guess. Later on, we find out that at some point in the 20 years that ensue after this moment, Yondu attempted to take T'Challa back home, but Yondu told T'Challa that his home had been destroyed and there was no home to go back to, which, again, doesn't make any sense. But there you go. So that was the initiating moment of how this whole thing started. Yondu's henchmen grabbed the wrong kid from Earth, and Yondu's like, oh, well. And T'Challa's like, oh, well, I'll leave my father behind and my family. There wasn't anything in that flashback scene that said, like, T'Challa had a problem with his father or that there was some kind of, fight going on, or he was being alienated from his father or something. There was no inciting event that would make T'Challa's decision to just go along with these aliens who just kidnapped him make any sense. So I know I'm dwelling on this, but it's because it's really the only major flaw in the narrative that I found in watching this. Because again, if you're basing these what ifs off of the source material, as in the characters as we know them from, in this case, Black Panther and Guardians of the Galaxy, neither of these things make sense. Yondu has been paid to do a job. Not to say that Yondu isn't against, going against the terms of the job, because obviously he did not deliver Peter Quill to his father. But all the same, yeah, okay. So anyway, that's how everything started. And so we rejoin T'Challa and his gang, the Ravagers, at a bar where they're celebrating the capture of that the gem, their little prize. Because the intention is not to use that gem to sell it. The intention is to use that gem, as they understand it, and its power to restart a star for a dying world. Because T'Challa has spent the last 20 years with the Ravagers doing good, helping people, robbing from the rich, and giving to the poor, effectively. Grand diversion from the original movie, with still a familiarity to it. And as we're here having this little bar meeting and everything and talking to the characters, a little bit of character building and a relationship, Thanos is there. And Thanos is now a good guy. because T'Challa encountered Thanos at some point in the past and convinced him that his grand plan for balancing the universe didn't make any sense. And so Thanos decided, hey, I'll join you guys. So Thanos is a Ravager. And they make light of his grand plan, which never came to fruition, which they all call, that kind of sounds like genocide. And he's like, no, it would have been efficient. So they've turned Thanos into a kind of comic character. And something else I have to also mention, almost everyone in the show here is reprised in their role by the original actor. Josh Brolin does Thanos. Michael Rooker does Yondu, and so on. Karen Gillan does Nebula. All except for a couple of people. Obviously, Chadwick Boseman was not around to do T'Challa. The actor they got to do T'Challa's voice is very good. I just sort of, in my mental theater, I would have had a hard time being told, if I didn't know otherwise, that it wasn't Chadwick Boseman doing the voice, because it sounded completely legit. Drax is not played by Dave Bautista, which was a point of contention on Twitter, because Dave Bautista was asked, hey, why didn't you do Drax's voice in What If? Because the voice credits had been released prior to the airing of the episode. And Dave Bautista's like, I would have if they'd asked me, which is just bizarre, unless there's some internal politics going on. So yeah, Drax isn't played by Dave Bautista. But almost everybody here is played by their original actor or voice actor, in the case of Seth Green, who does Howard the Duck, which comes up later. Anyway, so they're all at the bar and they're talking, and Thanos is becoming a comical figure. And T'Challa meets Drax for the first time. Drax is now a bartender, and his family's still alive because T'Challa's actions in the past actually saved his planet. And of course, Thanos wasn't there to destroy it. So that's all nice and cute. And they have a selfie. And then Nebula shows up, and Nebula has blonde hair, and she's this femme fatale, and completely different from the original. And she's got a job for the team. There's this magical stuff that's basically like, remember Star Trek: The Search for Spock and the Genesis project? This material thing you shoot onto a dead planet, and suddenly it becomes a living planet. Yeah, this is that, except in crystal form. There are these crystals that will rejuvenate any dead world, and T'Challa's like, oh my gosh, if we get this, we can, like she says, like one tiny little bit of this crystal will populate an entire world. And he's like, oh my gosh, we can solve galactic hunger. We can save all these people and improve all these people's lives. The only problem being is that the crystals are possessed by the Collector. I don't know if I can find a freeze frame here of her showing that, but either way, yeah. So these are possessed by the Collector, the character from the first movie. And again, voiced by Benicio del Toro, so that was nice. And Yondu has a problem with this, because in the absence of Thanos not becoming the supervillain that he was in the original continuity, that gap has been filled up by the Collector. And that exposition, a lot of exposition in this episode is very ham-handed about who is doing what and what the situation is. This thing's only about 22 minutes long, right? Thereabouts, so just under half an hour. Honestly, I would have been happy with a lengthier episode. I mean, the way this plays out, you could have done a 45-minute episode and had more time to flesh out some things, and some of these moments and situations would have landed a lot better with a little extra time. And again, that says something about the anthology nature of this series. Every episode has the potential to either be a stinker or an or pretty good. And as compared to Captain Carter, this one was really good, and I wouldn't have minded some more time with these characters in this iteration. So if that tells you anything. So anyway, T'Challa wants to do this. Yondu is like, dude, the Collector is like the worst thing since, death. So no, I'm not going to do this job. It's too risky. And T'Challa's like, but dude, this is me. And he's like, oh, well, yeah, this is you. I guess we'll do it. I'm like, okay. So they make this big plan, and it turns into Ocean's 11, where they start describing the plan as a narrative voiceover over the actual actions of what's happening in the caper, because it becomes a caper movie real quick. And so they're going to sneak Star-Lord in a box while they're basically trying to do a cover. They're going to sell something to the Collector. And then outside of the Collector's place, Thanos and one of the Ravagers is having a fight to distract the guards. The guards being the, what are they called? The Obsidian Order or the Obsidian Guard or whatever it is. I forget exactly what Thanos's enforcers were called, but they were Thanos's enforcers. Now they work for the Collector. So you get this whole Ocean's 11 thing of them breaking into the Collector's collection. And there's a whole bunch of Easter eggs in the things that are in some of the Collector's boxes. One of them being, and we'll get there in a second, is, let's see, can I freeze frame on that one? Yeah, so you get the dog, just like in the original movie. And let's see, I don't know, can I get, there we go. The Dark Elves. The Collector has the Dark Elves from Thor 2 in his collection. And this is some nice foreshadowing, because this actually comes back later in a beneficial way. And then he encounters Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck, once again voiced by Seth Green, and Howard the Duck gets a moment or two to interact with T'Challa as he shows him around the Collector's collection. And man, you know, I could see a Howard the Duck animated series doing fairly well, depending on who was writing it and how well the humor did. But at least for the moment that he was here, present in this episode, it was worthwhile and entertaining. And I appreciated that, because I always thought Howard the Duck got a raw deal from his 80s movie. As sort of culty classic as it might be, having a Howard the Duck intergalactic lounge lizard series might be kind of fun. So anyway, they go running around while there's still fighting going on between the Collector's guards and the Ravagers outside. And then Howard abandons T'Challa because he needs a martini, because it's happy hour. And then T'Challa goes walking through the Collector's collection trying to find the shards to steal. And his necklace starts glowing, and he doesn't understand why, because he's kept his necklace from when he was a child, and of course it's made of vibranium. And for whatever reason, that necklace activates a item in the Collector's collection, which happens to be a Wakanda speeder jet aircraft thing, which the Collector has stolen from Wakanda. And so this gives him access to this ship. He goes in there. It's like a little display with some Wakanda attire and things. And T'Challa learns from this message that his homeland didn't get destroyed. His father's still looking for him. His father was alive at the appropriate age for what he should be at this point. So T'Challa's like, uh-oh, because this is one big message of, if you have seen my boy, please send a message. So this is a revelation that was outside of the plan. And then, guess what? Nebula betrays them, because Nebula was working for the Collector because she had a debt to the Collector, and the Collector came to collect. And apparently T'Challa is to be part of his collection now. And so he's, T'Challa's thrown into a cell with Yondu and the others. And there's a confrontation because T'Challa's like, you lied to me. Because Yondu had told him his home was destroyed, there was no family to go back to, and that was a big lie. So there's this point of contention, again, which doesn't land very well, because we haven't spent that much time with the characters, and we'd been told that Yondu deceived him about his homeland. Well, we didn't really see it, and there wasn't really much interaction to sort of make that a wider point between their relationship. And so this moment doesn't land as hard as it could have if more time had been given to it. So yeah, it felt a little forced emotionally. And again, I know I'm applying a whole lot of expectations to like a half-hour animated episode of something, but it's all the same. You can do a lot in a half an hour in getting across emotion and relationships, and it just didn't quite make it there. I think they probably could have shaved off some more of the Thanos humor to give a few more seconds or minutes to Yondu and T'Challa's relationship, but que sera. Anyway, so they have a little fight confrontation about the lie, and there's a moment where T'Challa's like, "You're not my real family," which is and even one of the characters goes like, "Ouch, that hurt." But we find out relatively soon that it's not as bad as it looks. So T'Challa's in a collector cage, and he starts smart mouthing to the collector. And he says something inspirational about how men should not be kept in cages. And we get this reaction from the collector's assistant, which will pay off shortly. So anyway, there's more banter between the collector and T'Challa, the collector being a bad guy villain. And then it turns out that Nebula was triple crossing everybody. She shoots the guard and lets the Ravagers go because apparently this was all part of the plan. She told T'Challa from the beginning back at the bar what her real intentions were, and what they could really do is that she's got a debt to the collector. She's got to make it look like she's filling that debt to the collector, and then T'Challa can use all this as cover to get in and get things and yada, yada, yada. So it was a triple cross. Again, very sort of Ocean's 11 and fits in with Guardians of the Galaxy kind of stuff. So they end up being, they acquire the crystals. And so now it's the big, how do we escape from all this problem? And T'Challa uses his necklace to break out of his cage because now he's got claws, see? I mean, he's never been, and so far as I understand it, was he ever told about the Black Panther? I guess he must have been because he saw his dad in the outfit at the beginning. But anyway, so he makes claws out of his necklace, a la a panther. But then the other narrative thing that I wasn't quite sure about, and honestly, I do not remember the timeline of events from the Black Panther movie or Civil War, but T'Challa starts attacking and moving with superhuman grace and speed. Now, my only question, the thing I do not remember is, at what point in his lifetime did T'Challa get exposure to the vibranium plant or whatever in order to gain superhuman abilities? You know, in the absence of the suit, just those inherent abilities granted to a Black Panther. Because I understand he's been a space Robin Hood for 20 years. All the same, he leaps around from place to place and attacks people in a way that is a bit beyond your normal everyday human being. And also the fighting style and everything else. I mean, would this really be what a guy who hasn't been trained in Wakanda for 20 years, but instead up in space, is this how he would fight and move and be able to function? I don't know about that. So anyway, there's this big fight going on with the Collector, and the Collector starts using all of his gadgets and gizmos and things. And there's a Easter egg. Let's see if I can get it here. Oh, come on. Well, first off, he uses a fist from a Korg-like character that was dissected off of such a creature as a boxing glove to fight him. And then he gets a knife, sorry, from a collection. I'm trying to pull it up here. Okay, I can't get on the frame. But anyway, right here, Captain America's shield is part of his collection. Thor's hammer is part of his collection. I don't immediately recognize some of these other weapons. This looks quasi-familiar, but I'm not sure. Anyway, so yes, the Collector has all these items from various characters. Or maybe you can see down here in the preview thing. There's the frame I'm trying to find, but I can't get it. Anyway, so instead, then he pulls out Hela's hat. He's got Hela's hat, and this hat allows him to conjure death spears or death blades or whatever. And he starts fighting T'Challa with death blades and pins him against the wall with one of them. Anyway, the Ravagers and Nebula are trying to escape to the ship, and Thanos decides to stay behind to fight the guards to give Nebula time to escape. So he makes a personal sacrifice kind of thing as he's fighting them and punching them and all this other stuff. So you get this big fight with Thanos fighting his own guards as they would have been in the original continuity. And then T'Challa's chatting up the Collector, and he's pinned to the wall with the blade, which I guess would hurt really bad, wouldn't it? Unless it's not piercing his flesh, but I assume it has to be. But then Yondu shows up and fights the Collector, or distracts him long enough so that... let's see. So, sorry, we jump back and forth between the fight with the Collector and the fight with Thanos. And so Nebula goes back to help her dad and throws a couple of the elements of the super crystals into the mouth of the guy, and then he explodes into giant plant tentacles taking over Nowhere, the big city in the skull of a Celestial. So another episode where giant tentacles of some sort are an antagonist. So the Ravagers bust out of there in their spaceship as the entire place turns into the Garden of Eden. Meanwhile, T'Challa and Yondu fight the Collector, and they have a little moment of planning. Like, how do you want to solve this? And the guy goes, sticky fingers. Are you sure? Whatever that means. And it just basically means that Yondu steals the Collector's control bracelet, which doesn't seem like that complicated of a plan, but it is what it is. And then they knock the Collector into one of his own cages. They hand the control stick to his assistant for some justice. And then the assistant lets loose all of his captives and then opens his crate. And he is subject to karma. And then the T'Challa, Yondu escape in the Wakandan ship, and they bust out of Nowhere that's now being overgrown with plants and tentacles and all types of stuff. And then they make their getaway. And then Yondu and T'Challa have a moment of coming to terms with the fact that Yondu lied to him. T'Challa effectively forgives him. And then, of course, we get the inevitable return to Wakanda, where Star-Lord meets his father again for the first time after 20 years. And there's a whole bunch of like hellos and other characters from Black Panther that show up. And some more joking about how Thanos' plan sounds like genocide. Ha 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 ha. And then we just that's the end of the what if for now. Is that Star-Lord now knows he's still a Prince of Wakanda. What happens next? I don't know. But again, it was a different story with familiar elements, but a completely different thing. And I appreciated that. They completely changed the Ravagers. Star-Lord is a do-gooder inherently and not a wisecracking crook. Nebula's different. Thanos is different. The Collector's a completely different character. All of these things kind of make sense if you change the course of events a little bit, as a what if would do. Now, who's not in this episode? Gamora. Gamora's not there. Why? Well, they never explain. So, but you can imagine what it is. The simple answer is Thanos was not the tyrant. He didn't take over the planet that Gamora lived on because he was assuaded from doing that kind of thing by Star-Lord. So since he never took over that planet, he never met Gamora, and Gamora never became his adopted daughter. It was like, oh my gosh, they didn't try to recreate every element, every beat of the original movie. There's flirting between T'Challa and Nebula, but it seems like just flirting. But yeah, no Gamora. Oh my gosh. No Rocket Raccoon. No Groot. These things just did not happen. Unlike the Captain Carter episode where every single scene was effectively just a lift from the Captain America movie. Very welcome. Because I kept thinking, when's Groot going to show up? When's Rocket going to show up? When are they going to insert these characters in or make excuses for why these characters are around? They never did. So good on the writer for that. And then we get the closer, which again harkens back to what the what ifs really did in the comic books. Almost always you'd have a what if where there was some kind of ambiguous or potentially dire ending to it, like portents of a future that might not be too great, or something that is off to the side because of the events that took place in this iteration of history. And in this one, Peter Quill works at a Dairy Queen. And all of a sudden, his dad shows up. Voiced by Kurt Russell, thankfully, although Peter Quill is not voiced by Pratt. Chris Pratt, sorry. Name escaped me for a second. Where Ego meets his son and doesn't have the filtering or buffer of the Guardians of the Galaxy to sort of protect Peter from what his dad's plans are or the fate of the galaxy if Ego's plans go to fruition. But the Watcher, as the narrator of this episode, says, but that's a story for another time. Yeah. So, short version, as I've already been doing this for half an hour. This was a good, in relative terms, episode as a representation of a what-if comic book. This showed a situation that was similar, but drastically different than the original, with a cliffhanger / downbeat-ish type ending to sort of show that while everything worked out for those characters on the one side, the forces that were at work in the original continuity didn't just go to sleep. They were still around. And there's still problems and complications to be had, even in this revised universe. That is how a usual what-if comic went. So, if I have anything else to say about it, it's like, wow. All right, yay anthology, yay different writers, and not just one perspective or one ideology overseeing an entire series. So, that's my review, more or less, of episode 2 of What If. As compared to the first episode, I like this one. It was good. Was it perfect? No. Would I have liked it to actually be longer? Yes, which is kind of an odd thing to say, given the Marvel track record so far. But I wouldn't have minded having some more time with these characters in this situation. The whole Ocean's 11 caper thing was really neat. How they turned Thanos from a potential, devastating universe conqueror into a butt of jokes was really interesting. Because, as soon as they did that, I had no idea what they were going to do next. If the writer felt free to take the supervillain of the entire MCU for the last 10 years or 12 years or whatever, and turn them into the Drax-ish type butt of humor, anything was possible. So I appreciated that. So yeah, it is possible for a Disney Plus Marvel series to surprise you with something that is almost near a quality product. I'll take a second here to go over some comments from you guys, and then I will wrap things up. Racker8, 5K subs soon. Congrats. Well, maybe. I've been sitting at 4,900 something for quite a while now. I'm hoping to get to 5,000 by my 5th anniversary on YouTube. That's on October 11th. And I'm only about 80 or 90 subs away from that happening, which doesn't sound like a lot. But to me, that's a lot of subs. When I started this out, I was telling myself I'd be surprised if I got more than, say, 20 people to subscribe to my channel. And in 4 years, nearly 5 years, every time I look and I see that I've got 1 or 2 extra subs that showed up, I'm happy. I didn't expect anybody to want to listen to me over the last couple of years. So hopefully so, but we shall see. And if not, oh well. Let's see. Adabisi says, we need a better way to say when you're coming online. Yeah, right now, all I've got to rely on is tweeting out a link, a half hour or an hour or something before I start, unless I schedule it a day or two earlier. And hopefully if people are subscribed and hit the bell, YouTube is actually telling you in your subscription feed that there's an upcoming broadcast. I don't have any power over that one, unfortunately. Joseph Wilson, no, it would be different. He got the plant dose when he got the suit, the training would have been over the years. So no, this makes no sense lore-wise, fun for normies. Yeah, and so that was, like I said, the opening bit of explaining how T'Challa ended up with the Ravagers and the way that he fought the Collector. Those were the two things that made me go, that doesn't work. And I was pretty sure that he didn't get the plant dose until after he became the Black Panther, because they made a big deal of that in the Black Panther movie. And he hadn't had it. Like, his natural abilities and the suits augmenting him helped him fight in Civil War, but he didn't get the real gifts until after he became the Black Panther and the King for sure. So, yeah. And so that was, I know it's a minor quibble, so to speak, but that was, again, right. Normies, non-nerds are not going to care. I just noticed it because, I'm a nitpicker like that. Gen T Maxi, well, at least this one wasn't made by Kevin Smith. Otherwise, all the ladies would be sporting beefcake arms. Yeah. I mean, Nebula as a femme fatale, heaven forfend, right? Not as a baton-wielding duelist or sword-wielding just warrior. Actually taking characters and placing them in a different mindset based on the events of their own new past and actually reflecting that is great. Let's see. Corey Suzuki, I'll do you one better. Why is Gamora? Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Joseph Wilson, again, smash that like button if you haven't. Good review, Scribe. Still disappointed in the story, but your review was solid. Appreciate it. Yeah, like I say, this isn't perfect. Okay, I'm going off of relative quality. I'm just looking at the series as its own thing. As compared to Captain Carter, this one felt like a what-if issue of the comic book more so than that first episode. As I said back then, I am a very big fan of the What If series when I was growing up. There are a lot of stories in there that I hold higher than some actual stories in the regular continuity. My favorite, which I know they'll never do here, or at least maybe not until season 2 or 3 if they ever get there, is what if Doctor Doom became the Sorcerer Supreme? Because if they use the comic book as the template, and they don't deviate from the themes and the events from that comic book issue, man, you want to talk about a gallows humor, serious, gritty sort of what if alternate reality. What if Doctor Doom became Sorcerer Supreme is my favorite issue of what if ever, really. There are a couple that are just slightly below it, like, what if the X-Men became vampires? I don't think that was the name of the issue, but that's effectively what happened. Or what if all the Fantastic Four had the same power? That was a good one, too. I could go on for a long time about the issues of the what if that I liked. But anyway, I think I'm just going to wrap that up here. Yes, a positive review of something from Marvel. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Can you dig it? Anyway, everyone, thank you for joining me for this. Appreciate your attendance. Appreciate your generosity. And moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. One thing. Random American asked the question, did he finally get his mother back in that one? They don't say. They don't say. I'm assuming his mother still died. I'm assuming Peter Quill's mother still died because Ego putting a tumor in her head had to precede the events as depicted in this episode. So I'm pretty sure that Peter Quill still lost his mother. He just wasn't captured by aliens after he ran away from her passing away. So anyway, everyone, again, thank you so much. Hope you all have a good rest of your day. If you'd like to hear more from me or Satsu 2 Cents, you can find the two of us tonight, Wednesday night, on Satsu 2 Cents' channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for The Lords of the Night, as we approach our last few episodes, where we'll talk about the news of the day, news stories you submit, what we've been up to on the internet, and then your questions and comments. Everyone, I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.